Hey, welcome to Scattered Bible, where we look to enjoy the Bible together. And like the name suggests, I'm a little bit scattered at times, but it also represents the idea that we're hoping that as we explore some books of the Bible, explore some ideas in the Bible, that it scatters. It's not about one person with all the answers. This teaching, this series that we're looking at the moment, Daniel, I stand on top of thousands of years of commentary and scholarship and the Bible itself and its message. And so I hope that this just simply inspires us all to open up the Bible and delve in and discuss and wrestle and even disagree, but pull the main messages out of it, because I believe it's life-giving. I believe it gives us a way forward as we look at these stories around God interacting with humankind. It's incredible. And Daniel is one of these incredible books found in the Old Testament. It tells the story of an empire that has come and it has ransacked Israel. It has taken the treasure out of their temples. It has taken their future inheritance. It's taken their smartest, brightest, cream of the crop and put them and trained them in their own empire and are trying to form them to their ways. And so it's taken their future and it's taken their hope, in a sense. And so it's a book around a group of people, specifically a guy called Daniel and his three friends, living in a hopeless, chaotic season under a violent and oppressive empire. And it gives us some hope. It gives us some thoughts on how we actually cling to what we believe when the whole empire is against us. And so I'm looking forward to diving in with you into Daniel chapter 1 right now. But firstly, a little disclaimer, because if you do a little bit of a Google, a little bit of a YouTube on the book of Daniel, you'll likely have some person will come up, multiple people will come up with some sort of blackboard, whiteboard or description, and they'll start doing maths, linking to politicians, current events, previous events. There's Daniel prophecy and apocalyptic language. They'll carry the two, and they will come up with this idea around end times and their formula for how it's all going to play out.
In time, somewhere in the past, the timeline skewed into this tangent, creating an alternate 1985. Alternate to you, me, and Einstein.
And that is a ton of fun. And feel free to watch those videos. Do whatever you want. It's your time. And so I've watched a few of those videos. They're fascinating. Surely current events look a lot like empire and look like the cycle of empire that is described in prophetic and apocalyptic literature. However, a little bit of a disclaimer, and it starts with a little bit of a story. I pastor at a church, and in one of the churches I was involved with, I met a young group of guys, and they were not readers. They were not people to be sitting down and studying the Bible. They were men of action. And so I was shocked when they said, "Hey, Steve, will you come along to our Bible study?" And so I came along to their Bible study, and they pulled out the book of Revelation, which is also heavily influenced on the book of Daniel, and they unpacked this apocalyptic literature, which you may not know, apocalypse means uncovering. It's literature that is made to uncover and tell us things about the cycle of empire, the cycle of sin, and who's going to win. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but I guess I had the time. All right, don't turn off. Let me continue. These boys, these men, they would explore the Bible with me, and they had, I have to admit, I felt the Holy Spirit inspired them. These are not educated on this stuff, and God had opened their mind to some things. And I was really, really encouraged. Then it got to the end of this Bible study, and they told me the date. They told me that it would all end, that God would come back, he would rapture, if you know this language, in November 2021. I don't know when you're watching this video, but it's not November 2021. It's not before November 2021. It's long after November 2021. And I tried to encourage them, but they left the church, I believe. And I don't know if they're practicing, if they're following in the ways of Jesus. And I've reached out to them. There's a whole story there, which I won't go into. However, my point being, they'd placed their hope in a process. They'd placed their hope in a specific way things were going to play out. They'd placed their hope in control of the situation, of the events. They'd placed their hope in the events. They'd placed their hope in their own understanding. And they're not alone. There are YouTube videos, there are teachings, there are podcasts filled when it comes to the book of Daniel about people placing their hope in a certain way it's going to play out, in hoping in their cleverness and their Bible knowledge. Our world is full of ways to place your hope. Where are you placing your hope? As you reflect on that, what are you hoping? Are you hoping in a process? Are you hoping as you opened up this YouTube channel that I'm going to describe exactly how God's going to play out the end times? Is that where your hope needs to rest? Are you putting your hope in maybe some materialistic things? Maybe you're putting your hope, like a lot of people in the book of Daniel did, the empire, the politicians, the way they're leading, the future, their vision for the future. Maybe you're putting your hope in your bank account. I think, if anything, over the last few years or seasons of humankind, I think we'd all agree that they're not great places to put their hope into. It's okay to explore those things. It's okay to have a savings account. But I think I want to start, even though we haven't got into the actual scripture yet, I want to start with a question, because this question, I think, is what the author is asking right through the book of Daniel. Where are you placing your hope? For Daniel, his hope was in Yahweh. He clung to the prophet Jeremiah, who had said about this time when Babylon was going to be the main empire. He said, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for a future, plans to prosper, plans for a hope. Now, Daniel was amongst the messy, chaotic empire, but he still had hope that Yahweh, God, was good, that Yahweh had a plan, that Yahweh was deeply involved, as we'll see through this book. And so my first encouragement for you, if you're watching this today, is we live a couple of thousand years after this, and so we know Yahweh through Jesus. He's made more known to us. He is more present. We've seen him live and die and live again. And so where are you placing your hope? It's a question I'd love you to explore through this series. Is it hope in something other? Is it hope in a secondary doctrine or theology? Or is it hope in the one that wins, Jesus, in Revelation? Is it a hope in the one that has a plan and the one that has a future, both now and eternally? It's only, my belief, the only place worth placing your hope. If you're not sure, that's okay. That's why we're exploring this book, and that's why we're exploring the Bible. So that's enough disclaimers. Let's get into the book of Daniel. Let me read Daniel chapter 1. Open your Bibles. There's a link in the description. Daniel chapter 1. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. Basically, a bit of disclaimer here. The people of God had not wanted to follow God, had not to follow in his ways, didn't want to build his kingdom, his holy nation. And so God let them do what they want. And what comes with that is natural consequences. A more mighty kingdom, a bigger empire is going to take them over. And so in a sense, they got what they wanted, which is not an empire or a kingdom from God. It's a worldly empire. And so let me continue. So God allows this to happen. And so they ransacked the temple of God and they carried off to the temple of God of his God. So they take the treasure out of the temple, put it in their temple in Babylon, in Babylonia, and put it in the treasure home of his God. Then the king ordered Abinadab, chief of the court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family nobility. Young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and literature of Babylonians. The king assigned them into a daily amount of food from the food and wine of the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that, they were to enter the king's service. Among those that were chosen from Judah was Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief officials gave them new names. To Daniel, they called him Belteshazzar. To Hananiah, Shadrach. To Mishael, Meshach. And to Azariah, Abednego. Gave him new names. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and asked the chief officials for permission, or the chief official for permission, to not defile himself this way. Now God had caused the official to show favour and compassion to Daniel. But the official told Daniel, "I'm afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? The king would then have my head because of you." So he's scared that he's going to look bad. The king's going to be cross that he's allowed Daniel to do this. And this is a violent king. We're going to see that. This is not a great guy. This is a guy that does not have his morning coffee, needs a Snickers because he's not himself when he's hungry, and he's just out for violence. We're going to see that as the empire is, and so he's scared. However, let's continue. Daniel said to the guard whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, "Please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see." So test us on this. So he agreed, and he tested them for 10 days. And at the end of the days, they looked healthier, better nourished than any of the young men who had ate the royal food. So the guard took away the choice food and wine, and then they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. So they got this new diet of vegetables. To these 4 young men, through this, gave knowledge and understanding. God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. And Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. At the end of the time set by the king to bring them into his service, the chief official presented them to Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's service. In every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king questioned them, he found them 10 times better than the magicians and enchanters in the whole kingdom. And Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus. So Babylon raids Israel, steals these young men, steals their treasure, steals their future, is the greatest empire, is the biggest empire ever known. It's a world empire at this stage. And they take these young men and they let them, they have a training program, a formational program. They've probably done this before. Very clever, very manipulative. But they form these young men, they form their future into the ways of Babylon. It's an all-consuming, all-forming empire. And it's fascinating to take note because this sets up all the other books. This sets up this idea, this original chapter sets the rest up. The original chapter actually, side note, is written in Hebrew. And then 2 to 8, the next 2 to 8 chapters, which we'll get to, are written in another ancient language. And then it goes back into Hebrew. So it was collected, the author put these together. And the reason he does that, as you can see, this original chapter is explaining it all, explaining the ark, explaining these young men living in the evil empire, the evil consuming and forming empire, and how they went about it, how they held on to their hope. And if you're questioning, you're like, oh, how do we know this empire was forming? And well, it says, but it also says it really interestingly here. What I found fascinating, and actually I've read Daniel before, but I never realised this. I couldn't remember this. I'd learned a Sunday school song around their Babylonian names, around Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. But what I didn't realise is the empire changes their name. Fascinating, because listen to this. So Daniel gets changed to Belteshazzar, which means God is my judge. They change it to Baal protect the king. Fascinating. We'll explore why in a second. Hananiah, which is Yahweh is gracious and God is favoured, is changed to Shadrach, which means command of Aku, which is a moon god at that time. Mishael is changed to Meshach, which is who is like God and a mighty one, which changes to belonging to Atu and the servant of the king, another god and the king. And Azari is changed to Abednego, which is helped by God to help support. That's the name meaning, changes to servant of Nabu, another god. Another god. Just consider that for a second, that how clever, how evil, how manipulative, how forming is Babylon's ways. To form these young men, they give them new names. And they don't give them, take note, they don't give them like really dorky names. That's what I find fascinating. It's like, Daniel, you are, God is my judge. We change you to bark of the tree or dirt on the ground. They give them kind of similar cool names. And doesn't that just speak to empire? Doesn't that just speak to today? Today's day and its identities and title. Oh, they love them. Your assistant to the assistant manager will make you feel important. But it's a little dishonest. We'll kind of change how you see yourself. Well, hey, are you really like that? Oh, I don't think so. Let's give you a new, better title. Let's dive into who you really are. Let's make secondary things the main thing. Let's make who you sleep with your whole identity. Let's make your job, your title, what you do and you produce, your whole identity. Kind of like, so you'll be stoked to work massive amounts of weeks and for less and less income because you're a manager. You're a CEO. We'll give you these cool titles. You're an entrepreneur. I hope I'm making sense. Going a bit of a tangent, but a little bit scattered, you might say. But point being, empire is great at formation. And this is the cycle we're going to see. You see, sin loves company. And so sin always grows. We see this in the Bible. We see this play out. It eventually, this dark dominion that loves to see sin and sin grows in the community. We have sin, we have brokenness. It grows until it becomes empire. And in the Bible, in apocalyptic language, that empire is sometimes related to a dragon. It's just got uncontrollable. It's just an empire that's become manipulative, all-consuming, all-forming, and violent. And we see this cycle again and again and again. We see this manipulation right through the Bible. If you want to know the first example of it, look at the first few pages in Genesis. When the devil says to the accuser, says to Adam and Eve, did God really say that? Or when we look through the Gospels, Jesus gets baptized and God gives him an identity. Noted that Jesus hasn't died yet. Jesus hasn't done anything yet in that sense. But God gives him this identity as he's baptized. He says, this is my son who I am well pleased. In that human being, not human doing of Jesus, as he comes up from the water, God says, this is my son who I'm well pleased. In Jesus, we can have that identity in him. However, what happens feels like 4 seconds after that, the next chapter, Satan, the accuser, takes Jesus into the desert for 40 days. And every one of those identity statements he challenges, he tries to manipulate. Empire is always looking to form in their ways. And so, question for you, question to ask yourself. I mean, we're going to ask this plenty of times through this series, but question to ask if you're watching this with others, if you share this video with someone else, ask them the question. What's the point otherwise? Otherwise, we're just learning things. Cool. But how does this actually form our life and our way of being an empire? Question is, how is empire shaping you? And if you're like, nah, it doesn't get me, mate, doesn't form me. Cool. It gets me. How can it not? Or you just walk outside and you're being shaped. You turn on your TV, you're being shaped. I don't want it to shape me. I do resist that, and that's what this whole series is about. What to resist, what not to resist, because we've got to live life, right? These guys still got government jobs for the most evil empire in the world. They still have to live and feed their family. They've got to exist in that society. But how do you not let it shape you? How do you not let it shape you? You've got the image of a river just washing hardcore, just going downstream, and the tide, and it's rocky and it's wavy and it's just going hard, and you fall in. That's like what these guys must have felt. That's what it feels to be under empire. It's all going this way, but you'll want to swim against it. Because you know this way is going to lead to destruction. You know this way isn't true home. And so you can't swim against it in everything. And these guys don't. These guys don't swim against every decision. They can't. They've got to exist. But they still want to hold on to that hope, that plan, that prosper, that future that God has for them and their people. That God has for you, even though you're in the river of empire. And so you've got to find, and the other analogy, to build on the river analogy, I think of the rocks. I don't know if you ever fell in a river. I've fell in a few rivers, but nothing hardcore. But I know that in there's little rocks. And gold hold on to a branch, you could say. But I like rocks because they poke you, and they poke you in the back, and they stop you, and they slow you down. And I think what we're about to see in this chapter and in through this whole book is they find these little rocks to hold on to. They find these things to grip themselves and stand strong that remind them of who they are, the hope that they carry. Sometimes we got to make them, they got to hit us, they got to wake us up, stop us in our tracks. But we've got to give ourselves these little rocks to hold on to hope. So how do you hold on to hope? First question was, what hope do you hold on to? Second question is to acknowledge the empire is forming you. How's it forming you? And the third question, again, we're going to explore these over this series, is how are you holding on? How are you holding on to hope? How do these guys do it? Well, they're going to do it multiple times, but I love the first example. It's through their diet. Now, before you read this and you start turning his diet into some fad to lose a few kilos, please don't. Please don't. Eating vegetables and not drinking wine is going to be so healthy. You're going to feel better. That's awesome. But this is not meant to be the ingredients for a special Daniel diet. It's missing the main point. I'm not knocking you. You have Daniel diet. If you eat vegetables, that's great. If you don't drink, that you're going to have a clear head. That absolutely. But that's not the point. The point with his diet was not to lose a few kilos. The point of the diet was, one, to obey Torah, which was his holy scripture, which was a scripture telling him to eat certain ways. But it's even deeper than that. You see, when you eat, there are certain smells. There are certain tastes. I don't know about you, but in my family, we don't have massive structure around our eating time, but we have things that we wouldn't even realize that are family rhythms, conversation trends, things we talk about, jokes we make. Had my little nephew over the other day, and he's of the same family, and 3 conversations came up around dinner table. They were little boys, and so there was lots of talk about bottoms. Then there was lots of talk about Pokemon. And then naturally came up favourite stories of the Bible. And so if I could sum up my personal family rhythms growing up and then seeing my nephew and my son talk around the table, and daughters, I've got to be honest, bottoms, Pokemon, and what God has done in our life is probably 3 points that came up at the dinner table a lot. And as you can tell, there's lots of humour, there's lots of laughs, but there's also a deep understanding right from the young age, and not even deliberate. It's just what we do when we eat. We talk, we laugh. Sometimes it's borderline inappropriate, and I hope most of the time it brings God into it somehow, even if it's just gratitude or thanking him for our food. And so with food comes rhythms, comes a reminder of God's provision, comes a heap of stories, and comes hope. Not hope in the diet, not hope in the power of veggies, although it's a good thing. Hope in Yahweh for them, and for us it's Jesus. Yahweh made known. Holding on to that, creating that rock that, yes, would have poked him in the back. It's no fun. He could have eaten the king's banquet food. Choice food, it calls it. So the vegetables were a bit of a rock in the back, but they were just stopping him in their tracks, reminding him of who is meant to be forming him. Beautiful story. And God blessed it. God worked through it. They were gifted and equipped through that way of formation. And that's what he does. If you want to participate in his plan and his ways and you're holding on to him, if you're remaining in him, as it says in John, he's going to grow you. He's going to form you. So how are you holding on to hope? If I could summarize as we draw near to the end of this chapter, how are you practicing hope? You're holding on to it. You're finding ways to hold on to it. I like the idea of you're practicing hope. Not performing, you're not doing things to please God. You're doing things so you can remain in God. You can remember him. You can not let the patterns of this world form you. You can form your own patterns to practice. Give an example from my life. We are Saturday. Saturday, we are met with the Empire's voice saying you need to enroll your kids in 17 million different sports, 12 million different instruments, and extracurricular adventures and activities, or you're not a good parent. And so the pressure, I feel it. That may not be true, but I feel that voice, feeling am I a good enough dad with my young kids? Have they got enough opportunity? Should I be doing more with them? And there's elements of that we have to live in this society, that we want to give our kids things to do. And so they will do some sports. They are. My son is doing a sport. My girls are learning instruments. And so that's totally fine. It's good and beautiful. It's part of creation. It's part of what God's given us. However, I want a reminder on our Saturday. Me and my wife have decided we want Saturday to be a reminder of who God has created us to be, that we can just be with him, that it's not all about extra things. It's not all about doing things. It's not all about learning things. It's about sitting and resting, because the weeks are massive. And so for us, that can be a meal. Breakfast, lunch, or dinner. One of those will make really extra special. And when I say special, I mean we might have pancakes, not Whippets. Or lunch, we might actually sit down for lunch and discuss what we're grateful for that week. Or it might be a family walk. We have a lake near our house and we'll walk around it and discuss. Is it a battle to get the kids' shoes on and get them to go for a walk and tear them off video games? 100% every time. Such is the pointy parts of a rock. However, it's formational. Teaching our kids that they are not loved because of what they do or their grades or how they perform, but they are loved just being with us and being with our God and the things that he's blessed us with that week. Another great rock, I think, is church. Attending church. Now, there'll be someone, no doubt, watching this. You don't have to go to church to be a Christian, Steve. And they're 100% right. They may not say it like that, but they're 100% right. And they might have been hurt by church, and yeah, I get it. However, if you can find a group of Christians in your area that can encourage you, challenge you towards the hope that we carry in this crazy, chaotic empire, that can help you be formed in Jesus, that can remind you, challenge you if need be, then you want to do that as much as possible. Then you want to be part of the church. That's how we grow as a body. And so I'd encourage you, if you've been hurt or you don't attend, try again. I know it's hard, but find some people that you can trust, that can encourage you. Yes, they'll all be broken. That's why we go to church. We're broken. That's why we need this hope. We're broken. But try to find some people that encourage and challenge you towards that hope that's found in Jesus, and challenge you to find those things. I read something recently that was talking about the fact that some churches should sometimes be boring. And I laughed. I love it. I absolutely love it. I know I'm going a bit of a tangent here, but you may not go to church because it's a bit boring. Why is that a problem? In an empire that tells you need to be entertained at every 7 seconds, that something needs to be beeping or showing you a video or recommending something or a new show produced or entertaining, that your mind can no longer just concentrate. What on earth is wrong about once a week going somewhere that's a little slower, a little boring, and a little still? How on earth are you going to hear God's voice in the noise unless you stop and for once in our life, in our modern age, be bored? Now, I'm not saying churches need to aim at boring. My church, we don't try to aim to be boring. But my goodness, maybe we should. Maybe that's the pointy rock we need. Hey, this is a bit boring today. I guess I have to process some feelings. I guess I have to process what God is saying. I guess I have to process. It's like a thick rock in the back. I don't know. Scattered tangent over. What are you holding on to? It's not a religious thing. It's a hope thing in the all-consuming, all-forming empire. Do you know that where your hope is found? I hope it's not found in the empire, the leaders of the empire, the celebrities of the empire. It can be, but tell me when that has ever worked in the cycle of empire falling. We're going to see that in the next few chapters. We're going to see a lot more. We're going to ask these questions a lot more with a lot more depth. But for now, I'll leave you with those questions. What are you placing your hope in? How are you holding on to hope? And then what's it look like to live in that, practice hope, for God to grow you through that, gift you in that, to exist, represent that hope as Daniel will eventually. And these guys already are representing that hope because they're living in it. Hey, this is meant to start a conversation. This is meant to get us all exploring the book of Daniel. And so please comment below, share this around, make a response video if I've missed something, because I've missed a ton. It's a deep book. I'd love to hear your thoughts, love you to help me out. And look, it would help if you hit subscribe. It would help if you hit like. It would help, it'd help me make more of these videos, help me see that they're helpful. And just look forward to chatting, and I'll see you in the next video in the next chapter. Thanks so much. See you then.